Okay, so last time we finished up the book of Mark to the point where Jesus was going into Jerusalem. This is Mark 11 that we're going to be just starting with today. The rest of the book of Mark will be about his time in Jerusalem, and basically Mark has very little of a resurrection account. Only a few verses in chapter 16. We have tons, just gobs and gobs of Old Testament references we're going to be reading through today. I'm going to try to get 11 and 12 done, chapters 11 and 12 done, and maybe 13, although that will require some significant explanation. So 13 is probably asking a bit too much, but that's the goal. But we have tons of Old Testament references to get through, so let's get started. Because this whole section of the Gospels themselves, really, but this section, this week in Jerusalem, is just drenched in Old Testament significance. So you can't do a reasonable reading of these chapters without knowing the Old Testament references that are being called out. Because the characters in the story do know this. Jesus knows this stuff. The apostles know this stuff. The chief priests know this stuff. The crowd, like they know this stuff. Okay? We have to know what they knew. If we're going to understand this sequence of events in context, we have to know what they knew. We have to understand. Now, again, there's more significance going on here that only Jesus knows about at the time, and the other characters we'll learn about later, which we have to read it with that significance too, because the men who are writing these Gospels 20, 30 years later know about the greater significance going on here, which they didn't know at the time these events happened. But in order to fully understand, we still need to understand the sequence of events as they understood it, and to understand that, we have to know the Old Testament, because they didn't. So we have a lot of Old Testament readings to get through today. Mark 11. As they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethphage and Bethany at the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent two of his disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you," which I guess is Bethphage or Bethany, one of these two, "and just as you enter it, you will find a colt tied there, which no one has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, 'Why are you doing this?' tell him, 'The Lord needs it and will send it back here shortly.'" Now, Jesus is going to be staying in Bethany during the night, during this week in Jerusalem, and as we find out in other Gospels, Luke and John, he had friends there. That's where Mary, Martha, and Lazarus lived. This is where the resurrection of Lazarus happens, as we read about in the Gospel of John. It's right outside Jerusalem, not very far away, and he might have very well been staying with them during this week, in his final week. I don't know that. The scriptures don't specify that exactly, but he had friends there. So this village that they're going to is probably Bethany. Anyway, so they went and found a colt outside in the street, tied at a doorway. I'm assuming Jesus had this arrangement set up ahead of time, especially if he had known associates in this town. He may have told them to have a colt ready for him by next time he came through town. But who knows? I really don't. The scriptures don't say that. As they untied it, some people standing there asked, "What are you doing untying that colt? Are you stealing it?" They answered as Jesus had told them to, and the people let them go. When they brought the colt to Jesus and threw their cloaks over it, he sat on it. Many people, now this would be probably in that crowd that's coming along with them. Remember back in chapter 10, verse 12, it says, they were on the way up to Jerusalem with Jesus leading the way, and the disciples were astonished, while those who followed were afraid. So you have Jesus and the 12, and you have a crowd of others, and we'll read about in Luke that Jesus had a group of 70 disciples that he sent out to prepare the way for him before he made the last trek to Jerusalem. So that's probably who they are, maybe some mixture of them and maybe others. So there was a crowd of people besides just the 12. who are coming with him. And these are the ones who are going ahead of him into the city at this point as he's riding his colt. So they brought the colt to Jesus, threw their cloaks over it, and he sat on it. Many people, this crowd that's been coming with him, spread their cloaks on the road, while others spread branches they had cut in the fields. Those who went ahead and those who followed shouted, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the coming kingdom of our father David. Hosanna in the highest." Hosanna, of course, means salvation. Jesus entered Jerusalem and went to the temple. He looked around at everything, but since it was already late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. Now we have several scriptural references we got to read here. Mark doesn't really call attention to it. Matthew will. But him riding a colt into the city is significant prophetically. Zechariah, one of the last prophets of the Old Testament times, we read about him and we read Zechariah, our Zechariah video, had this to say. We're going to start at the beginning of Zechariah 9. The verse in question is Zechariah 9, verse 9, but we're going to start at the beginning. Because again, we have to understand that it's not enough, really honestly, it's not enough to just pick out. Yes, there are quotes in these scriptures. The New Testament will pick out these 2 or 3 lines in the Old Testament to quote. Okay, it will do that. We just did, well, actually Mark didn't there, but Matthew will, for example. He'll quote Zechariah 9:9. But you have to understand, when they do that, they're not just quoting that one, usually, most of the time. They're not just quoting like that one line. They're calling to your attention the entire context. This is especially true of the Psalms. And that's why whenever we read the Psalms quoted, which by the way, Psalm 118 was quoted there. So we're going to read that in a moment. When they quote the Psalms in particular, they're not just quoting a line. They're trying to bring your attention to that entire psalm. And that's true of the other quotations as well. They don't have enough room. Literally, physically, do not have enough space on their parchments, on their scrolls, to fit in the entire quotation. Okay? You have to remember that now it would change soon, okay, by the time the New Testament started getting circulated amongst the church, they switched to the codex format, which is like this, with a spine, okay, with pages like this, to make it easier to carry and hold and have copies of. But at the time that they wrote this stuff, especially the Old Testament, and even the New, they were still writing on scrolls. And scrolls had to be formatted carefully because they didn't have a whole lot of space. That's why they wrote everything in columns, and that's why they had they would even kind of number their letters per column. Every letter had to be like in a row, in a column, because they just didn't have physically enough space to just have endless letters or endless words. So when they're quoting the Old Testament, like they're not going to quote like enormous chunks. They just literally don't have the space on their page to do that. So they will quote a couple lines here and there, but for the most part, when they do this, they're drawing your attention to the entire context in which that quotation is found in, and they're expecting you, as an educated Old Testament Jew. I mean, the New Testament writers are expecting their audience to be familiar with the Old Testament. So in order to understand it, we have to do what they expect us to do, which is to read the context in which those quotations take place in. So the quote itself is from Zechariah 9:9, but we're going to start at the beginning of Zechariah 9 and get the whole context of this passage. An oracle. The word of the Lord is against the land of Hadrach, and will rest upon Damascus. For the eyes of men and all the tribes of Israel are on the Lord. And upon Hamath too, which borders it, and upon Tyre and Sidon, though they are very skillful. Remember, Zechariah is writing around 500 BC or so. Tyre has built herself a stronghold. She has heaped up silver like dust, and gold like the dirt of the streets. But the Lord will take away her possessions, and destroy her power on the sea, and she will be consumed by fire. That actually happened. By the time of Jesus' day, that's already happened. Remember, this was written 500 years earlier. Ashkelon, that's the old Philistine territory, will see it and fear. Gaza will writhe in agony. and Ekron too, for her hope will live. This is all in the area that we now today call Palestine, which is rising in agony today too, for unrelated reasons. Gaza will lose her king, and Ashkelon will be deserted. Foreigners will occupy Ashdod, one of the Philistine cities, and I will cut off the pride of the Philistines. I will take the blood from their mouths, the forbidden fruit from between their teeth. It's referring to the food they're eating. Those who are left will belong to our God and become leaders in Judah, and Ekron will be like the Jebusites. But I will defend my house against marauding forces. Never again will an opponent overrun my people, for now I am keeping watch. Rejoice greatly. This is the key one here. So basically, he's going to overthrow Israel's enemies. Now, by the time of Zechariah, this Zechariah lived in 500 BC. By the time of Mark, this has already all happened. The Philistines are not oppressing the Israelites any longer. Tyre and Sidon are not oppressing the Israelites any longer. That's already done. But the idea is communicated further that God will overthrow their enemies. Their enemies in Mark's day are the Romans. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, daughter of Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and having salvation, gentle and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. The donkey was the king's vehicle. David rode a donkey too. I will take away the chariots from Ephraim, and the war horses from Jerusalem, and the battle bow will be broken, so there won't be any need to fight anymore. The enemies will be gone. You'll proclaim peace to the nations. His rule will extend from sea to sea, and from the river Euphrates to the ends of the earth. As for you, because of the blood of my covenant with you, I will free your prisoners from the waterless pit. Return to your fortress, O prisoners of hope. Even now I announce that I will restore twice as much to you. I will bend Judah as I bend my bow, and fill it with Ephraim. I will rouse your sons, O Zion, against your sons, O Greece, and make you like a warrior's sword. So the idea being communicated here is that God is going to defeat his enemies and give victory and rest to his people. And Jesus is now here to do that. He is here to enter the kingdom riding on the king's mode of transport, the donkey. So this is what they've been waiting for. Now what's going to happen when they get there, okay? Putting robes, by the way, we saw them do this before with kings in the past. This is not a good king, but in 2 Kings 9, King Jehu becomes king of Israel. And it says in 2 Kings 9, verse 13, they hurried and took their cloaks and spread them under him, Jehu, on the bare steps. Then they blew their trumpet and shouted, Jehu is king. So this is a kingly coronation ceremony. As Jesus is riding into the city, this is, by all intents, he's being declared king here. Now we're going to read Psalm 118. This is the context of the Hosanna phrases that they were singing when they were waving the branches, and he was riding along on the camel on top of their cloaks. This is the context in which this is the psalm in which they were quoting from as they sang their song. This is a psalm that we need to keep in context in our minds for Jesus' coronation, entry into Jerusalem. Psalm 118. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Let Israel say, his love endures forever. Let the house of Aaron, the priests, say, his love endures forever. Let those who fear the Lord say, his love endures forever. In my anguish I cried to the Lord, and he answered by setting me free. The Lord is with me. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? The Lord is with me. He is my helper. I will look in triumph on my enemies. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in man. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in princes. All the nations surrounded me, but in the name of the Lord I cut them off. They surrounded me on every side. but in the name of the Lord I cut them off. They swarmed around me like bees, but they died out as quickly as burning thorns. In the name of the Lord I cut them off. I was pushed back and about to fall, but the Lord helped me. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. Shouts of joy and victory resound in the tents of the righteous. The Lord's right hand has done mighty things. The Lord's right hand is lifted high. The Lord's right hand has done mighty things. I will not die, but live, and will proclaim what the Lord has done. The Lord has chastened me severely, but he has not given me over to death. Open for me the gates of righteousness. I will enter and give thanks to the Lord. This is the gate of the Lord through which the righteous may enter. I will give you thanks, for you answered me. You have become my salvation. The stone the builders rejected has become the capstone. We're going to hear this referred to, quoted again in the New Testament and referred to, reference to Jesus. The Lord has done this, and it is marvelous in our eyes. He is that stone the builders rejected, who becomes the capstone. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. O Lord, save us. O Lord, grant us success. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. From the house of the Lord we bless you. The Lord is God, and he has made his light shine upon us. With bows in hand, join in the festival procession. That's what they're doing right now. Up to the horns of the altar. You are my God, and I will give you thanks. You are my God, and I will exalt you. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. So the king has come to his city. He has a crowd of followers with him, and they are treating him like a king. They are expecting him to go in there and set up his kingdom and deliver all these promises that God said the king would do.